Hello and welcome to No Sweat. We all know that we love our footy here at No Sweat, and with a few days to go till footy restarts and round 2 kicks off, we've got something a little bit different this week. We've all decided to do our best Jane Bunn impressions, and we're forecasting the 2020 season. My name is Luca, and with me today to look ahead and break down our thoughts, as always, the three wise men. Hello and welcome to James.
I'll take wise.
Hello, Dodsy.
Hey, how are we all?
He'll take
Very good. And Johnny, how are you, mate?
Fantastic. Looking forward to being a Jane Bunn this week.
I hear you like some buns, mate. What's your recipe of the week?
Why, I'm cooking so good!
Well, that's a good question, Gennaro. As for this week, a nice ragu. Basically, go out and buy the 3 different type of animals, cheapest meats you can buy. Get a big cast iron pot, oil the pot, brown the meat, chuck in 2 jars of passata, 3 jars of peeled tomatoes. Bring it to the boil, chuck it in the oven overnight at 100 degrees, super slow. Lid on, take it out in the morning, put it on low, lid off, let it reduce. The meat will just disappear basically, and it'll be one of the most richest, beautiful ragus you've ever had. Use a nice filele pasta or something like that. Magnificent. Thank me later. Onion and garlic as your base too, by the way.
Fancy. All right, before we get stuck into the predictions, we're going to cover off some major news of the week. James, you're our man in the know over at Top 4 next year. What are the big stories this week?
So we actually have a bit of news this week. So we've got obviously coming into football starting on Thursday, so 4 sleeps. We've had the Hall of Fame, which was, I guess you could say, somewhat of a success over a few nights. So just quickly, we've got 1 legend elevation. So obviously John Kennedy Sr., predominantly because of his work as a coach. We've got a few Hall of Fame inductees. We've got John Abley, Greg Phillips, the Commit, Dennis Committee, John O'Brown, Simon Black, Lenny Hayes, and Dean Mason Cox. Dean Cox had some pretty interesting comments, which have pretty much overshadowed his induction. He reckons that Ben Cousins should have been elevated a long time ago, specifically 4 years. He said he should have been eligible back then, but I was looking at the eligibility criteria before I thrashed Dean Cox, and I have come across a few of the criteria. So I'll just quote it ad nauseum. So we've got, they need to have a outstanding service and overall contribution to the game of AFL in determining, and that's how they determine the eligibility. The committee may consider a candidate's individual record, ability, integrity, sportsmanship, and character. So just going off that, I don't think any of us would agree that Ben Cousins should be in there. What do you reckon?
I reckon he should be in there.
Yeah, what did you do? A bit of cocaine?
Oh, I've probably everything under the sun.
If it's based on pure footy ability, do we all agree that he's definitely in there?
Yes.
Yeah, you'd have to.
Yes.
Yeah. So just because he's had a few off-field issues, that's what's holding him back at the moment. But who's the AFL to kind of be on a moral high horse from that point of view? Because to be honest, I reckon half of the big fellas up in AFL HQ are on the coke as well. So for them to not allow Ben Cousins to get in, I reckon that's just a bit rich, in my opinion.
Yeah, true. But are all those at AFL House trying to get inducted into a Hall of Fame?
Did they actually get anything for getting into the Hall of Fame? Like, is there any financial reward or incentive or anything like that at all? Or is it just recognition?
I wouldn't say so, but I could be wrong.
Okay. Look, it's funny. Hall of Fame is one of the, to be honest, frankly, it's overrated. Who got into the Hall of Fame last year? No idea.
Moldhouse was one.
Right,
the rest were a few old ones. But
to be honest, even those names that you just rattled off, I got no idea who they are. So frankly, the whole thing's overrated. So like,
righto. So you got no idea who Dennis Committee is? John O'Brown, Simon Black, Lenny Hayes.
I know who they are, but there's a couple, Phil Colbert or whatever his name. I got no idea who that bloke is. And to be honest, even years gone by, I couldn't tell you. I think there's just too much American type hype put on the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, fair enough. But they're the inductees that we've got.
Yeah.
Moving on, we've got Andrew McLeod. So Andrew McLeod he has his own podcast. So he was talking about not feeling welcomed at the club at Adelaide where he was a champion. And that garnered a lot of sort of media attention throughout the week. And a lot of people had their opinion. And the ones that I was mainly focusing on were the ones who actually played. So you've got Gary Lyon, Wayne Carey, and Bill Brownless, who I was listening to predominantly. And they actually agreed with him, saying that sometimes when you walk into a club, you might not feel welcomed just because of how different the club can be over time. So you've obviously got people that can change roles. You've got different players, just all the sort of the scenery changes.
What were his reasons for saying that he didn't feel welcome?
He pretty much just felt as if it was, I would be speaking on his behalf, but sort of like it was a bit impersonal. They didn't really honour club legends. And I think he took offence to it predominantly because he does do work at the club with all of his coaching and all that sort of stuff. And I think that's probably why he felt slighted in a way. But yeah, it's like obviously it garnered a lot of attention. Adelaide's board and obviously Rashudo, who runs the board there, he was aggrieved by it. And when McLeod doubled down, I read throughout the week that Rashudo said he actually cried a few tears over it. Because obviously it's a club champion. You don't want him to feel like that. You don't want them to be publicising that.
Yeah, I think he was on a podcast when he mentioned that, so could have just slipped out. I don't think he has a strong opinion about it that, he can't go back there and he doesn't feel totally welcome, but I just think it was a conversation on the podcast and it kind of slipped out a bit. And I don't think it's a huge story, to be honest. But Luke, what do you reckon?
He did double down though, didn't he, Jim? He did come back a second time.
Yeah, he doubled down. So you would assume that it would be something that's on his mind. You would assume that it's not something that just rolls off the tongue. So you think he would have had some consideration to it. But anyway, they're going to let bygones be bygones anyway for them. Moving on again, we have Damo Barrett was talking to Gil McLaughlin throughout the week. And he said that he finds it and he wants it to be his personal ambition to have 100,000 at the G for the grand final. So to pack out the grand final, obviously that'd be a big victory for footy fans and hopefully anyone who wants to go. It might not be as corporate as previous years, hopefully, because they can get as many footy fans in there as possible. Just tracking and seeing how Australia is going with the whole COVID situation. Obviously, we're tracking a lot better than other countries, and it could be a possibility. 100,000 at the G. We've only got 450 active cases as we stand, so it would be fantastic. How great would it be for the football landscape if we could have a packed out MCG? It'd be amazing.
When was the grand final actually pegged for? I know someone mentioned Cox Plate or something. What was the actual date?
Yeah, October 24th, I think, or 22nd.
24th. So what are we now? The 6th. So we've got another 4 or so months to go. Yeah, potentially, I guess. That'd be great if it kicked off. Probably even better for society, the very fact that we can have that many floating around. But yeah, no, it's good.
Yeah, there's been some questions raised the last few days as well with the protests that have been around in the city. Not to delve into that too much, but just on the fact that there are thousands of people gathering together in an area, there are suggestions that maybe the governments will start lightening up on these mass gatherings. So it'd be interesting. Hopefully they do end up allowing some reintroductions like we spoke about last week.
Yeah, I just saw on a lot of Twitter buzz yesterday with the people that head down to the city yesterday. Apparently 50,000 were protesting the Black Lives Matter. Like, we won't get into it, as you mentioned, but a lot of people were saying, well, we're going to protest at the MCG to watch live footy. So I think a lot of people, it rubbed them off the wrong way. So I think Gil doesn't really have a choice, to be honest, coming up. I reckon the fans are just going to crowd into the G anyway, James.
And even narrowing that focus from the grand final, obviously we know that there's probably not going to be crowds for the next 4 weeks minimum. But even after that, or even within the next few weeks, if we keep tracking the way we're going, could we see crowds returning to the game earlier than we thought? So I know a lot of people were sort of speculating earlier in the year that there'd be no crowds whatsoever throughout the whole year, just because everyone was unsure about the whole situation. But if we get to a point where in a couple of weeks we can have 1,000 to 2,000 at a ground, why shouldn't we? Have you boys have much of a consideration to that? Obviously, barring everyone coming in and coming out, that'd have to be worked out. But yeah, I reckon it can happen.
Yeah, I reckon for sure, James. And the way that the stadiums are built and designed, it's going to be pretty easy, I think, for them to set up the temperature testing at the gates and the social distancing sitting in a stadium of 100,000. I reckon they'll be pushing 20, 30,000 at the G for sure. But I reckon time will tell. But the next few weeks for sure, I think things are just going to ease back even more. And it's going to be great to get back to the G for sure.
Won't have 100 at the G come October. Won't happen. Definitely won't have 100,000. Can't see it happening. It's too short of a time frame. Even this whole thing's been going on for as long as it has. It's still it's going to take a while. Optimistic. Good on you, Gil. positivity, breed all that, but really don't think it's going to happen.
Well, every week we've sat down to do this podcast and we've had major changes in just a week's time. So who knows what will come up. Hopefully it continues. Hopefully we get some crowds. Hopefully we get to see some footy in person this year. Now, moving on, boys. I hope you've got your crystal balls nice and shiny this week because we better get these ones right. For those at home, we've made our guesses throughout the week. We've compiled them all together to get the definitive No Sweat Award winners of season 2020. We've got some individual player awards to discuss. Then we've got our team awards and a ladder to go through. And to cap it off, we'll be doing our finals draw live on air today. And we will see who takes home the 2020 AFL Premiership. Before we get stuck into the nitty-gritty of that, though, let's kick off with something a little bit lighter. We'll play a game of what's more likely. It's fairly straightforward. 2 options for the upcoming year and which one is most likely to happen. So around the circle we go. Up first is James.
Thanks, Luke. That was a very definitive intro. So for my what's more likely, I'm going to go something a bit pretty footy heavy. And we were just talking about his team earlier, but we're going to see what's more likely. Do Richmond go the season undefeated or do Adelaide make top 4?
I think
What do we reckon?
Richmond going undefeated would be a bit more likely. Shorter season as well, and just them coming off another premiership.
In all seriousness, the length of the season was actually the reason why I chose that. You wouldn't really, it would be inconceivable to think that someone would go 22-0, but 17-0, can't be done.
Maybe.
Could be. Yeah.
I think more. What was the thing with Adelaide to make the top 4?
Top 4, yeah.
They'll be lucky to sneak into the bottom 6.
So what, does that mean they're going to be above 12?
No, what I was trying to articulate there is they're definitely going to make the bottom 4 for one creep. Top 12. There we go. Let's go with that.
Yeah, I can't see Adelaide doing much well this year either. Doddsy, you're up next. What have you got for us?
Beautiful. So I've got, does Buddy Franklin, does he play more than 5 games this season? Or do the Blue Baggers, do they win more than 5 games this season? What do you reckon, boys?
I like this one. I like it a lot.
Oh, I'm going to say the Blues win more than 5. Well, Buddy's not going to get. He's already done his hammy. We don't know how long it's going to be till he comes back, really. And you have to be conservative, someone his age. I'm going to say the Blues are going to win over 5. The Teague train's going to keep rolling.
Buddy will play 5. They'll roll him out for 1, then in for another. They'll spread 5 over the season. Carlton will not win 5 games this year.
Oof.
Will not.
They'll have to go 5-12. And if you just do a quick percentage on that, that means Carlton have to win 41% of games.
Oof.
I might have to change my answer.
That's quite high.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, that's right. What did they win last year? About 10, 20%.
Carlton?
Percentage form or?
Yeah.
Oh, 10%.
So they won 6 games last year.
Yeah, so
Out
that'd
of
be
a potential 22. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
27%. Are we seeing a 14% increase of wins?
Sharp increase.
Bear in
What do you
mind
reckon,
it's out
Luke?
of 16 games because we've already lost 1. So
Yeah,
Yeah,
fair
you're
point.
behind the 8 ball.
Very quick on the maths there, Jim. I've got to say, you can tell you're in a banking type man. I was going to say you're rattling off percentages left, right, and centre. I love that.
Yeah, that's off the top of my head as well, yeah. Yep.
He's always been good with numbers, old Jimmy.
all right, I'll jump in next. What's more likely? Patrick Dangerfield wins the Brownlow or Tom Hawkins wins the Coleman?
Oh, I'm going to go Dangers win the Brownlow. He's been around the mark for a while. He should get there just for his legacy.
The potential style of the season may suit him as well. Shortened quarters, shortened season, power athlete, burst player type thing. He might get a bit of airtime and might pull some votes. Hawkins, on the other hand, to be honest, less time on the park probably does him a disservice as far as kicking more goals.
And Josh Jenkins
but-
next to him this year as well.
Yeah, I was going to say
Yeah.
that as well.
I'm going to go
All
with Hawkins winning the Coleman, I think. I think Danger's best is a bit behind him now, and the midfield's stacked these days, so I don't think there's any chance he wins a Brownlow, in my opinion.
You don't think that Jenkins coming or Radigalia having more game time would have any impact?
It could have an impact, but I don't really rate Jenkins too much, to be honest. And I just think, Danger's still a great player, but I just think after last year he dropped off a bit, and I think he's in a downward spiral slightly for this year as well.
Yeah, fair enough. I've been accused of bias on this show and in life in general, and frankly, I'm just going to put that to rest now. What's more likely in a similar vein to what Luke had? Ben Cunnington winning the Brownlow or Nick Larkey winning the Coleman?
I get stuff.
None of those are happening.
Can we cut this?
Which one was more likely? Was the question, Jim.
More likely Cunnington.
Thank you very much.
I can't see Larkey winning a Coleman with Ben Brown next to him. I'm giving you a serious answer for such a ridiculous call.
Could there be a world, though, if Ben Brown gets injured next game and then Larkey just takes that number 1 forward role and kicks 70? I don't know. There's been a lot of hype with Larkey of late.
He'd be fed,
a few weeks ago on this pod. He could be kicking a big bag soon. You never know, boys.
70 goals in a 17-game season will be historic.
Well, his name's Nick Larkey. He's historic.
Yeah, it's
We won the last few weeks.
What do you need?
4 goals
five
a game average.
Oh, he was kicking bags of 5 last year comfortably. Quick maths by Jim there, percentage-wise. He's there. He's home. That's it. You heard it here first, friends. Nick Larkey kicks 70 next season, or this season even.
And Cunnington's hair plugs don't do him any favours for me. So,
No, he's gone down media street.
All right, moving on. It's the time you've all been waiting for, the 2020 No Sweat predictions. Now, my apologies if you don't like spoilers, because we're about to tell you how the next 6 months of football are going to go. Kicking off first with the player awards. We're going to work our way up to the big one. So we'll start off with the Rising Star. Over to you, James.
Thanks, Luke. Again, fantastic intro. I'm loving that. So first we've got the Rising Star. So obviously we all know what the Rising Star is. You got more often than not the best first-year player. And we're all quite unanimous. We all think that Matty Rowell is going to take that.
Yeah, I think we all agree on this one. It's pretty tough to predict the Rising Stars anyway, because you never know what the kids are going to be like, but all the hype around Rowell seems to be pretty positive.
I don't know. It's hard to get excited about a Rising Star without having any build-up or expectation even going through the season yet. But yeah, no, you'll go right, the old kid.
I remember watching him, I think it was the under-18s champion, the grand final, and he was just he was a clear cut above the rest. So I think it's quite it's obviously a safe bet to say that he's going to win it, but it's sort of like Sam Walsh last year. He's an outright first, but we're just waiting for someone to try and pin him.
I think with the lack of media allowed at training, obviously because of restrictions and stuff, there's just been a less hype in general about who's tearing it up on the track, and especially with rookies as well. So it's a very hard prediction to make, but I think we made the safe bet there.
Yeah, and I think adding to that as well, with a lot of the media around Matt Rowell, a lot of it's been more around the friendship that him and Noah Anderson have, rather than Rowell's actual footballing ability. But pretty spot on. Once the seasons get started, there'll be a bit more sort of exposure on him.
So we've got the next award is for the Supercoach top scorer in 2020. And we've had 3 nominees and 1 winner. So 2 of the nominees that didn't get the win were Tom Mitchell and Patrick Dangerfield. A couple interesting names there. But Brodie Grundy is going to be the winner for the top scorer. And I think that's a safe bet, lads. He had a monster year last year, and I think he's just going to get better as well.
Yeah, up until last year, there was always the question of the Supercoach ruckman going back-to-back, the Cox curse. But Grundy did it last year. He top scored in the ruck 2 years in a row. I see no reason why he can't do it again. And with the shorter games, he might have a bit more influence as well. So it might be good for his Supercoach prowess.
I was a bit surprised that Cripps didn't get a mention, actually. And I like Tom Mitchell because coming off his broken leg, he obviously we know that he's a pig junior followed by Dane Swan for fantasy and all that sort of stuff. But I think Mitchell can take it to another level. Obviously, he's just broken his leg. And averaging 38,000 disposals a game, it's a bit hard to go above that. But I think he's got still a lot of value and a lot to give.
I think the thing with Tom Mitchell as well, with the shorter quarters, he's one of those blokes that racks a lot of possessions up late in quarters as well because he's got a great motor and is just running all day. So I think the shorter quarters might hurt him a bit. But for Grundy, I think that's going to help him even more, and he's going to be more damaging with his hit-outs and his kicks and so on.
Is Mitchell perhaps not spectacular enough as a player? So while he did what he did on the pitch as far as possessions and all that, but like we said, shorter game time, shorter bursts, doesn't do enough to necessarily draw the attention. If he's racking up 33 a week, will it be enough?
I think Mitchell's a great player, but there's just I don't think he's in that elite category of the names that we've mentioned last week. You know, your Crippses, your Fifes, your Neils. We're not going to get into it too much, but he's still a tremendous player, and I think he's going to have a great 2020, like James mentioned.
All right, next up, we've got the Consistent Craig, which is a name that's been given to us by a friend of the podcast, Machich, a few years ago. This is one that goes to the player that we think will poll votes in the most individual games. So not the Brownlow Medal winner, but the most games they will poll in. Nominees this week, Nat Fyfe, Dustin Martin, and Lachie Neale. And the winner goes to Nat Fyfe.
Can't argue with that. All three of those you can make an argument for.
I think, I reckon Lachie Neale was stiff there because Brisbane we all probably think they're going to be top 4 this year or maybe 5th or 6th. So I think he'll poll a lot of 3s and wins and might get a few sneaky 1s and losses. Whereas just Freo, like I love Fyfe, you know, I think he's the best player in the comp, but I think there's going to be a few games where Freo just not in it and he might have a few zeros, but he's going to be best on ground when they do get the wins. So
even on the flip side to that, you got Dusty. Obviously, you would expect Richmond to continue their ways, so you also expect him to poll a few votes. So it's obviously there's a reason why those 3 were picked, but I think I agree with the outcome.
All right, the next category, gentlemen, is the Coles man. Why do we say Coles man? Because what do you do when you walk out of Coles? You carry bags like these 3 men nominated, kicking bags of goals. We have the first category nominee, Mr. J. Cameron, Mr. B. Brown, it's Benny from the North Melbourne Kangaroos, and Mr. Tom Hawkins. And the winner, drum roll, Mr. J. Cameron.
Yes.
No.
Good call.
It's hard to argue with that one.
Back to back.
Yeah, Brown was robbed last year. Who kicked 7 goals in their final game in a nothing game? But no, Cameron's a worthy winner, irrespective. So, it's one of those ones. I don't think Hawkins will come anywhere near the Coleman, but Brown and Cameron rather. Yeah, Cameron's a worthy winner.
I reckon Jez could get up there in Brownlow votes as well in the next couple of years.
Bit of competition at GWS, isn't there?
Yeah, there is, but I just think he's so unique as a player these days, and with the lack of great forwards, I think he's going to stand out even more this year. I'm not saying he's going to win a Brownlow for sure, like he won't, but I just think he's one of those players that could, like Buddy a few years ago, maybe sneak a top 3 or top 5 finish in the next couple of years.
Yeah, he's definitely in the right age bracket at the moment to get there. So at the moment he's 27, played 155 games. He's if he was ever going to win one, it'd be now. But what I would find more interesting is I'm pretty sure this is a contract year for him. And even though that he's agreed in principle to this huge long-term contract, I'm not too sure. I don't think he's actually signed on the dotted line. If he could perform as well as we know that he can, he might be able to add a couple more zeros to that contract and then, get paid a bit more.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's in for a very strong year again this year.
Well, we've reached the point of time where we're going to be talking about the big one, the big individual award, I guess you could say. So we're going to be talking about the Brownlow. So we've got a few nominees. We've got Fyfe, Cripps, Neale, Cunnington, and Bontempelli. A few of those have, only one's actually won a Brownlow. So there will be, out of our nominees, there might be a few that are first-time winners. So the winner, drum roll please, John. 3-time Brownlow medalist Nat Fyfe is our winner. I think
the big man.
Congrats. Yeah, obviously, as Lucas said before, this is a cheat sheet to the season, so he'll be the second ever 3-time Brownlow medalist. I'll have to check that one later.
Good question.
Yeah.
I think Stilton's won a few. But anyway.
Interesting runner-up names there with Ben Cunnington there. I wonder how that
voted for him.
Snuck in there.
out of Nat, so putting Nat Fyfe aside, out of those nominees, who do we think is next in line to get the Brownlow?
I reckon Lachie Neale. He was very good last year. Great move from Freo to Brisbane. Brisbane's up-and-coming team. They overachieved last year. I think this year is going to be interesting how they go again, but I think Neale's just a machine. He's going to keep going.
Yeah, we spoke about this a little bit last week. I agree. I think Neale's primed for another big year. But again, we do see growth in Cripps coming as well, so that might be a good chance if Carlton can string a few wins together too.
And how do we feel about Bontempelli? I think he's also going to take another step this year. Obviously, being given the captaincy, the Dogs looking to be improving this year more than others. Anyone see him getting close?
I don't think the captaincy would do him well on the first year. I think he's still a young fella, and the adjustment for him, he'll be taking that sort of leadership, and there may be just a fraction more sacrifice to his role for the first year. So I don't think he's in Brownlow contention this year. He'll have a subtle downer. In the future, though, I think he'll be fine.
And Bont just stands out so much on a footy field, doesn't he? Like he's a great player. Umpires love him. Commentators love him. So that bodes well for a Brownlow as well. So I think he's going to definitely be very high this year as well.
I think something else that's adding to into his favour is Lockie Hunter's going to miss the first few games of the season. And again, we're speaking about it being a condensed, shortened season. Every game means more. If there's more possessions to be won in the game, obviously Hunter and Bont play quite different roles. One's more of a gatherer, one's more of a like a pinpoint distributor. There should be some overlap in that play, and you could probably expect Bont to get a couple extra touches a game, for example, and could make that step towards the Brownlow, I think. But nonetheless, it's good to see that Nat Fyfe's going to be his third.
So those are the individual awards done. Congrats to Nat Fyfe on winning the Brownlow. Now moving on to the ladder. Why don't we start off with the wooden spoon first, then we'll cover off our top 8 and our finals draw live on air. So, Dodsy, off to you.
Yeah, we'll start with the wooden spoon. It's an award that Carlton's made quite famous in recent years. But this year, the No Sweat team has predicted the Gold Coast Suns to finish with the wooden spoon. And that is with a 1 win in the season and 16 losses. That's what we've predicted. So I'm struggling to see where that 1 win is going to come from, to be honest.
Yeah, they'll sneak one somewhere.
North Melbourne? Or that's going to be interesting.
That's one for you, Dodd.
Do you boys agree with Gold Coast being wooden spoon? Or
Yep.
There's not much argument you can make for anyone else, I reckon. I think Carlton will improve. So I reckon you already write them off straight away. I reckon Melbourne might give Gold Coast a run for their money. I don't see any improvement coming from from Melbourne, sorry. Adelaide, potentially. They've bottomed out at the moment. Youth culture. Yeah. But
where does Fremantle sit in that?
Sydney and Freo could be sneaky ones.
We'll move on to the top 8. In 8th place, sneaking in here, 1 win ahead of 9th. Clear 8th place, 9 wins, 8 losses. The Hawthorn Football Club.
In 7th place, Western Bulldogs with 11 wins and 6 losses.
And in 6th place, we have the Brisbane Lions, who have fallen a little bit from their previous year. They're going at a record of 13 wins and 4 losses.
With the same record of 13 and 4, we have Collingwood in 5th place.
Now, moving into the top 4, we have 3 teams on the same record from 4th all the way up to 2nd. But in 4th place, we have the Geelong Cats with a record of 14 and 3.
In 3rd place, we have Richmond, the reigning premiers, with 14 wins and only 3 losses. Not quite the 17-0 that Jim was hoping for, but still up there in the top 4, second chance, all that stuff.
In 2nd place, we have the West Coast Eagles finishing with a record as well as 14 and 3.
That leaves the mighty GWS Giants in 1st place. And this might shock our listeners, but we've actually got them as undefeated this year. Can you believe that?
Oof.
The Giants will not lose a game, according to the No Sweat podcast team.
There's a big, big sound.
I'm not sure I agree with the GWS thing. I think, so just for the viewers at home, the way this was taken, all 4 of us had an individual input, and then the average was taken out of that to generate this list. I definitely had GWS down for a couple of wins, losses even as well. So realistically, they're not going to do a 17-0. Not going to happen. Something else is more likely to happen.
We did say with a shortened season, it might be a little bit more possible this year. But there we have it. That's your No Sweat top 8 finalists for this year. Congrats to our minor premiers, GWS. Now, before we move into the finals, we'll quickly cover off the whole ladder so you can see where your team finished. So in 18th place, as we said, Gold Coast Suns with 1 win. 17th is Fremantle, 3 wins. 15th and 16th, both 4 wins, Carlton and Melbourne. Adelaide in 14th, Essendon in 13th. 12th place was Sydney. Same amount of wins as St Kilda in 11th and Port Adelaide in 10th. And narrowly missing out on the 8, North Melbourne with 8 wins. And then, as we said, the top 8 is Hawthorn, Bulldogs, Brisbane, Collingwood, Geelong, Richmond, West Coast, and the undefeated GWS Giants. Any surprises, lads?
I'm a bit surprised having Essendon 13th. I think we're better than North. If I'm going to throw some shots over.
Whoa. That's one.
If I'm going to throw some shots over at my counterpart over here. Sydney's probably a fraction low. Adelaide maybe a fraction too high. But all in all, I think that's pretty good. It's quite definitive.
Now that brings us through to our live finals draw. So quick fire answers here, boys. We've got the elimination finals first. The losers will be out. The 5th place plays 8th place. Collingwood versus Hawthorn. Who have we got? Money's on Collingwood in this one.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think they're going to be too strong for Hawthorn this year. I think Hawthorn's a bit unlucky to draw Collingwood. They were hoping to get someone a little bit easier.
Yeah, I think the Hawks, the Pies are a bit stronger, but I think the Hawks have had their money over them the last few years, and it could be a lot closer than what we're thinking. But yeah, I think the Pies will get up as well.
Yeah, on current form, Pies.
All right, unlucky to Hawthorn. The other knockout game is Brisbane versus the Bulldogs. Who have you got, Jim?
Where's that played? Obviously, that's at the Gabba, isn't it?
That'll be in Brisbane, yep.
I'm going to say Brisbane just. That's about as a 50-50 game as you can get. The home ground advantage probably skews that for me.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with James. I think the Lions will be too strong up there at the Gabba.
No, I'm tipping a brave and courageous, one might say, Western Bulldogs to get over the top on that one.
I think I would have put the Doggies in as well, but considering we're 2-2, we'll give it to the team that finished higher on the ladder. So Brisbane will go through the qualifying finals. So the winner of these games goes to the prelim and the loser goes to the semis. 1st place versus 4th place in Sydney. GWS versus Geelong. What are our thoughts?
You can put your money on GWS there. They're not losing that game.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with James again. The Giants will knock off the Cats for sure.
Yep, 3 from 3, boys. GWS.
Make that 4 out of 4. In the other game in Perth, West Coast versus Richmond.
Oh, this one again. This is 50-50 as well, considering that it's in Perth. Judging by last year, West Coast took Richmond all the way at the G. I think it was around 21 or something. I'm going to go the Eagles. Again, the location of the game is what's skewing my perspective and my decision, but I'm definitely going to go the Eagles.
Yet again, I agree with you, James. I think the Eagles will beat Richmond over there at Perth.
And what'll be a brave and courageous performance, Richmond will get up away from home.
No, I've got the Eagles in this one. Sorry, John. So we've got West Coast and GWS moving through to the prelims. In the semi-finals, we've got the losers of the qualies versus the winners of the elimination finals. So the first of those games will be Geelong versus Collingwood.
Are we saying that this is going to be a Geelong home game at their home ground of MCG or at their home ground of GMHBA?
Good question.
For argument's sake,
be realistic.
Yeah, for argument's sake, let's say the G. Oh, you can't see Geelong going to the G and knocking off someone who plays there, A, more regularly, and B, better. Obviously, a wider ground. So I'm going to go the Pies.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you again, James. And Geelong in recent years, they've had a good habit of being out in straight sets. So I think that's going to happen again this year.
Was this the semi-finals?
Yes.
Then Collingwood will get up.
Is that a deciding factor for you?
Yeah, it is, because then they'll get knocked out in the preliminary.
Oof.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the Pies have got this one as well. So that's 4 out of 4 on that one. In the other game, we've got Richmond versus Brisbane.
At the G again, when you're thinking about it, and a lot of the times the decision-making of the finals and seeing who's going to win, throwing it up, home ground advantage, even if there is no crowd, I think it plays a huge factor. So I'm going to go with the Tigers.
Yeah, I can't see the Tigers going out in straight sets after last year's premiership, and I think they'll be too strong for the Lions at the G.
Yeah, in a brave and courageous performance, Richmond will get up.
Stunning and brave.
Tigers for mine, so they will go through. Now, on to the prelims, the 2 big money games before the granny. Again, played up in Sydney, GWS home to Richmond.
Well, we mentioned earlier in the program that we're aiming for 100,000 at the G for the grand final. So I'm guessing that we're going to be aiming for 50,000 each prelim. Being at GWS's stadium, that's obviously not very likely. So let's go GWS again.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you yet again, James. I think the Giants would be too strong for sure.
And just a quick disclaimer, I was talking about the crowd. It doesn't bother GWS. They're used to playing in front of no one. So crowd, no crowd, they'll still be fine.
It'll take a fair performance to rewind last year's grand final loss, though. They got hammered in that game.
Character building. There's no reason that a team like that can't beat Richmond now.
So you're saying no greater motivation than a loss, a spanking?
Absolutely.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, look, I tend to agree, Jim. In a stunning, courageous, and brave win, GWS will get the job done.
Is anyone winning not courageously for you, JD?
Well, Jim, you don't win any other way.
Yeah, absolutely not.
All right, well, that's 3 votes already down. My vote doesn't matter, but I probably would have called the Giants too. So they go through to the granny. Now, the other prelim in Perth, West Coast, another grand final rematch. West Coast host Collingwood.
Well, considering that the Eagles have the form against the Pies, I'm going to go with the West Coast Eagles.
I think this is our first disagreement, James. I'm actually going to go for the Pies. I think they're going to be so hungry after the grand final a few years ago, and I think it might be a bit of that Geelong Hawthorn 2008 banter, and I think they're just going to be so focused, and they've had 2 years in a row of losing in a grand final or a prelim, so I think they won't want to do 3 years in a row.
What changes for you? So Collingwood couldn't get there against the Eagles prior. What's changed for you to actually make that decision?
Honestly, I think these games that the Pies have been in the last 2 years, they could have gone 50-50. They were close games, and you need a bit of luck in footy, and I think the Pies are as strong as any team in the competition right now, and that's just my gut feeling that they might have the ball bounce their way in this prelim.
Well, I think in a dismal, hapless and fearful match, Collingwood will lose, and West Coast will get up quite nicely.
Interesting. I think I was leaning towards Collingwood winning this one as well. But that brings us to a 2-2 draw, so I'll refer back to the ladder. And we've got West Coast ahead, so West Coast will go through to the granny, which will be an all-interstate affair. GWS versus West Coast at the MCG.
Well, it's been a few years since it's been an all-interstate grand final. Judging on recent form in the grand finals, you would be expected to say the West Coast, just because they obviously beat Collingwood in 18 and GWS got pantsed in 19. But again, I think we were talking before about that hunger and determination. I think if GWS can learn from what they did wrong and how they approached the grand final last year, then they can definitely improve. So I'm going to say GWS is going to win the flag, and coincidentally, that also coincides with our premiership winner.
Where would this game be played? It'd still be at the G, you reckon, this year?
100%. In front of 100,000 at night.
Yeah.
I think the contract's just too hard to get out of, so I expect it'll be played at the G.
So we'd say West Coast would have the advantage. There'd be a lot of West Coast fans coming over, wouldn't there, for sure?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think
fans-wise, you would expect Eagles to have more fans. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think only that. I think also the stadium is the exact same size. I believe Optus Stadium is the same size as the G, sort of physically.
Yeah. I think, West Coast have come over a few times at the G and won a grand final, so I'm going to pick them again. I think they'll beat the Giants in a granny.
I think the Giants might get up. I reckon they're burning. They've played that one game under full siege, I guess, by Richmond supporters. So if they get a lower crowd interstate team, I reckon they will do the job.
Yeah, I'm going to put my vote in on this one purely on gut feel because who knows at this point. But I'm calling it the Giants as well. And that gives it 3 votes to the Giants. And that's it. Your 2020 AFL Grand Final winners, the GWS Giants.
That's one heck of a spreadsheet and a cheat sheet that you can take to the bank.
Undefeated, granny winners. What a season. All right, with the predictions over for the year, it's time for Australia's favourite trivia segment, Footy IQ. If you haven't heard this before, the boys go one at a time to list the answers to a question or a prompt until they're all named. But if you get one wrong, you will hear and you're out if the next person answers it correctly. We've played this game 6 times, 4 of which have finished without a winner and 2 of which have been won by Dodd. This week, we're continuing with the awards and the medals theme. We're going in the order of James first, Dodd second, John third. And we're looking at Coleman medalists since the year 2000. So we've got 10 winners on the board over 20 seasons. James, you are up.
Let's go with Jezza Cameron.
Jeremy Cameron, the reigning medalist. Correct. Dodzy.
Let's go with Lance Buddy Franklin.
The only 4-time winner on the board. One in 08, 11, 14, and 17. Correct.
How many are there in total here, Luke?
10. So 8 to go, John.
Okay, from the year 2000. Rewalt.
Which one, mate?
Which one?
Come on, boys. The Richmond one, Jack.
I'll take that. Jack Revolt has won 3 for Richmond 2010, 2012, 2018. Over to you, Jim.
Let's go Josh Kennedy.
Josh Kennedy, which one, mate?
The one that kicks
There
off.
he is. Come on, boys.
Josh Kennedy is correct. Back-to-back in 15 and 16. Dodsy.
I think Tom Hawkins snuck one in a few years ago, didn't he?
He did not.
Oh, heck me.
He did not.
Oh.
So, John, can you
I got-
kick out the Dodd?
No, I don't think it will, but I'm going to go Brendan Favola.
Damn it.
Ding, ding, ding. He won 2 in 2006 and 2009 playing for Carlton. So we've got 5 names left on the board. James, who have you got?
I might go the other Rewalt. I might go Nick Rewalt.
Sorry about this. He did not. So here's a
was
chance
misled.
for JD to swoop in and claim his maiden
Ugh.
victory of the footy IQ.
Anyways,
Who have you got, John?
How many options have we got here?
5 names on the board.
5 names on the board. Matty Lloyd.
James, talk to me about this one, please.
Oh, he's done it.
Congrats, John. I had Matthew Lloyd right after Nick Rewalt, but I thought when Lucas said
boy.
which one to you and you cracked the sads, I thought there was both of them had won it. So, yeah, congrats. It's tainted.
James, you're a loyal listener to
Johnny
support
with
us.
a win.
Hardly talk.
So Matty Lloyd won 3 times in 2000, 2001, and 2003. And James, being a loyal Essendon supporter, I'm very disappointed in you for that one.
Well, I knew that one was guaranteed, so I had it up my sleeve. I didn't think that JD was going to go there. So I was going to knock out some of the more conventional ones first.
You thought I was going to go the Ben Brown lure, didn't you, mate? But no, I
No,
succumbed
not
this time.
even
I
thought that
succumbed.
stupid.
All right, there's 4 names left on the board. Do you guys want to have a guess at who they were?
John O'Brien.
John O'Brien won 1 in the year 2007.
Alistair Lynch.
Yeah.
Alistair Lynch did not. No.
Can you
Keep
give us
along
the
your Nick
years?
Revolt lines.
Yeah.
The big G train, Fraser Gehrig. Back-to-back,
No.
2004, 2005.
No way.
Yeah.
He won
Barry
back
Hall.
to back.
Back to
What
back.
a gun.
Barry Hall he won?
Barry Hall did not, no. 2002 was David Neitz at Melbourne.
Oh, yeah.
2013, Dodsy.
That
Ruffy.
would have been
Ruffy.
Nick Larkey.
It was Jared Roughhead.
Yeah.
So, congratulations to JD, who takes his maiden win. And he's
Occasionally
a
the
step
cream
behind
rises to the
Dodsy
top.
now.
I can't
Who'd have
believe
thought?
that. Who would have thought JD would get a win?
All right, so that's us for another week. Thank you for joining. We'll be back next week with real football results for the first time in a very, very long time. Congrats again to the GWS Giants for winning the flag this year. Congrats to Nat Fife for taking Charlie home. As always, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at No Sweat Podcast. You can follow me at Luca on Sport. You can follow James' work at Top 4 next year. Get in touch. Let us know your thoughts. Did we get the winner right? Do you agree with our player awards? And who do you think will win the flag this year? Thank you to Jim, Dodd, JD. I've been Luca. We've been No Sweat. See you next week.